Once you open up Multimedia Fusion, the screen will look very similar to the screen that I have displayed right now. To start a new project, all you will need to do is click on File in the upper left hand corner and go down to New. You can also do this function by simply holding on the control button and pressing N. Once you have a new application open, you can now begin to modify certain aspects of it. As you can see, if you look here, you have a Properties toolbar, a Workspace toolbar, and a Local Library toolbar. If for any reason one of these toolbars disappears, you can always bring them back by simply clicking on View and going to Toolbars, and then you're just going to make sure that the toolbar that you're looking for is clicked. So for example, if for some reason my library toolbar wasn't there, I will go down right here and I will click on the check and make sure that the library window is selected. Now, when I want to begin to work on my application, I will simply click on this window right here within the frame. Now I can see my working environment. There are several different working environments that you'll work on as you create your video game. The frame that we're in right here, this area is called the frame editor. And as you can see, we have several different editors we can modify. We have our storyboard editor. We click that, it brings us back to the initial screen. Once we click on inside of the frame that we're looking for in our storyboard editor, we have access to other types of editors. We have the frame editor. This is where we're located now. We have an event editor, which we'll use shortly, and that is how we're going to modify conditions between our objects. And then we also have an event list editor, and it's basically a list of events that we create within our event editor. So now that we're here in the frame editor, which can be accessed by clicking on this icon here, or simply holding on the control button and pressing M, it'll take us to our frame editor. From our frame editor, we can add objects. Now we have a few ways that we can add objects to our frame editor, but before we get into that, let's discuss what objects are. Now, when you're playing a video game, every aspect that you see on screen is an object. Everything from the fireball that Super Mario shoots, to the enemy that gets shot, to the land that he walks on, to the power-ups that he collects, to the coins that he collects, are all objects. And to make a video game work, it's up to you as the designer to create relationships and conditions between these objects. Now, first thing you may notice in our frame editor, and I'm going to make these windows bigger, keep in mind you can always make the windows that you're working in bigger by you move your mouse and you're going to look for this black dual arrow symbol, and whenever you see that, you can click and hold and you can modify it to adjust the size of your screen. Now, objects that are located on the white area of the screen are going to be objects that are always going to be seen by the user. So for example, your character. Your character is something that gets followed along with the camera in the video game. So your character is always going to be located on this white area. Now say for instance if your character receives a power up and now is able to shoot projectiles out. The projectiles are going to be something that only is on the screen when you press a button. So for example, if you're playing Super Mario Brothers, every time you shoot a fireball, the fireball is an object that's only called upon when you press a button. These are going to be items that are going to be placed off the screen. So your projectiles and things that are not always going to be on your screen are going to be placed in this off-screen area. Things that are always going to be on screen, that's going to be anything from your main character to the items that make up your level, to coins, etc. These are things that are going to be located on the on-stage area. Now that we know where these objects are supposed to be located, let's discuss how to actually add these objects to the game. So I'm going to take you through a simple exercise that's going to take you through how to add objects. Now, in order to add objects, you first must make sure that you are in your frame editor. Your frame editor is the only location in the video game design software that you can add objects. Now, there's several ways that you can add objects. Right now, I'm going to show you a way to add an active object. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the white area of your screen. You're going to right click, and then this drop down menu is going to appear. You're then going to go down to, of course, insert object. Once you click on insert object, you then have another menu that's going to pop up. I want you to click on where it says active object. Once you have active object selected, a little aim arrow, your mouse cursor is going to change to like a little plus sign. I want you to then left click onto your screen and you'll see an active object. Active objects are objects that can be modified to do active things like move or have collisions with other objects. Now that I have this active object selected, let me show you some of the properties in the properties toolbar over here that you can modify for any active object that you implement into your game. The first thing selected is your display options. Your display options controls how your active object is viewed in certain conditions. So for example, right here you say that this active object is going to be visible from the start of the frame. That means once the frame starts, you're always going to be able to see your active object. There may be situations where you want to make your active object invisible at the start of the frame, but for now let's keep it simple. The next set of options that you can see once you click right here next to it is your size and position objects in your properties bar. Size and position gives you little information that you can manually input and change for your active object. For example, if you modify these numbers in the position, you can change where your object is located manually without actually having to physically drag and drop it to different locations. So if you look over here to the left as I move the active object, you'll see that the X and Y coordinates of my active object changes. From here in this tab of the properties menu for an active object, you also have size that you can manipulate. So traditionally, if you wanted to manually change the size of your active object, you can click on it until these little black dots appear around it, and then you can pull on the dots to modify the size of your active object. Well, if you look at the active object toolbar over here at the tab, you can just manually enter in numbers and you can change the size of your active object to fit however you would like it to fit or to be the size that you would like it to be. The next tab that you can select is the movement tab for your active object. Like I said, active objects are objects that you can actually tell to move by either user input or give it a path so that it can move on its own, like artificial intelligence. Now, as you can see, by default, every active object's movement is going to be static. And if you look at the context clues in the picture, static means that it's something that's not going to move, something that's going to always stop. If I go down to where it says type on my movement tab toolbar, I can see that I have several options for my active object to move. I have a static movement, which of course means it's not going to move at all. I have a bouncing ball movement, which is going to make my active object move like a bouncing ball, continuously bouncing around the screen. I have a path movement. A path movement allows me to create a certain path for my active object that it'll go along as my game plays. I have mouse control movement. Now, mouse control movement is something that I want you to stay completely away from. We will not be using mouse control movement. We experience a lot of glitches with that movement, and so we're just going to steer away from it. And a final movement, even though we have several others we can look at, I want you to look at the 8-direction movement. 8-direction movement means that when we move the arrow keys on our keyboard, we can manipulate the direction of our active object. So if I wanted to create a character that can move around the screen freely, I will give him an 8-direction movement, and I can use the arrow keys to move him around. Another key movement that I want you to recognize is a platform movement. A platform movement gives our active object the ability to move like a platform character. A platform character is something similar to maybe a Kirby or a Mario. It's a character that has the laws of gravity applied to it. So that means that your character just can't move around the screen at free will by using the arrows. There's actually going to have to jump, and gravity is applied to that character. So for a platform character, you must always have an object on the ground to be a platform object type so that it can land on. If I were to create a platform character without any ground underneath it, he would simply just fall through the screen into nothingness. But we'll go into more details about that later. What I want you to do now is I want you to take your active object and I want you to turn it into an 8-direction character. From this point on, we're going to treat our active object as if it were our main character. The reason I want to do this is so that you guys can understand the concept of that any object can be anything. It's the video game designer ability to create conditions that's going to give any object in the game its reasoning or its meaning. So our main character can be a blue diamond. It can be a female warrior. It doesn't matter. As long as we code the game correctly or create conditions in the game correctly, anything can be anything. So don't tunnel your thought process into thinking things just have to be something automatically. It's up to you to create the conditions in order for something to be something. So I want you to go ahead and make sure that you change the type of movement for your active object that you put on the screen to an 8-direction character. Now I want you to locate the F7 button on the top of your keyboard, and you're going to press that. Once you click on the F7 button, it's going to open up an application testing screen. And now I want you to use your arrow key, and you can kind of see how you can manipulate the movement of your active object by clicking on the arrow keys on your keyboard. Alright, now once you've finished testing, make sure that you click on the red X to close out of the application screen. A lot of the times people try to code by simply just clicking back on the screen, and they have issues doing anything else. As you can see, everything is blanked out. If you're ever in a situation where you're trying to do something in the frame editor or any other editor and it's not allowing you to do so, more than likely, if you look at the bottom of your toolbar, your bottom toolbar tab, you'll see the application still open. So you have to make sure that the application is closed in order to continue to make edits to your video game. So now that we've tested 8-direction movement, let's go over another way that we can insert objects. Now, as you can see before, all we did was right click on the screen and we did insert object. You also have a local library that's filled with information. So I want you to locate the local library in the lower left corner of your screen. I tend to want to make my library screen a little bigger. So as you can see, I'm adjusting the size of the area. And like I said, you're always going to look for the little dual arrow. And once you do that, you can click on the area that you need to make bigger. And so now I've made my local library bigger by simply clicking on the plus sign that's next to where it says local library. You see I have more options. I'm then going to go down to where it says games. So I'm going to click on the plus sign next to games. And you see I have even more options. I'm going to click on where it says characters. Now the local library is filled with several resources for us to input into our game that are already created. So as you see, I clicked on characters. I'm going to select an enemy character to be on screen with my blue diamond hero. Let's go to, I'm going to go to goblins and witch doctors. You should take the time and find a ball of resources that you would like. There's several that you can choose. I want you to take the time and select one. You're just going to select one enemy character that you're then going to drag from that folder and place on your screen with your character. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Alright, so now as you can see, I have a goblin enemy located on the screen with my blue diamond hero. So right now I want you to go and find the character that you're going to place on your screen.